I rescued a big shot by the seaside. During his amnesia, he only recognized me. After regaining his memory, he sent me away with a sum of money. With that money, I raised a little puppy brother. The doorbell rang in the middle of the night. The big shot stood at my door with red eyes. Please, get him away. It was dark and the waves were fierce. I saw someone lying on the rocks by the sea. Risking being swept away by the waves, I dragged him up. He is a handsome man. Although he had no serious wounds, he remained unconscious for many days. During that time, I changed his dressings and fed him simple liquid food. His eyelids twitched restlessly, yet he still could not wake up. I found myself staring at him. He was truly beautiful. I grew up by the sea, with parents who were fishermen. After they left, I lived alone, relying on fishing to support myself. It was a sunny day, and I was mending the holes in my fishing net in the yard. Suddenly, a tall shadow loomed over me. I realized that man had woken up. If you wake up, please leave as soon as possible, I said without turning my head. Sister. A guilty, sticky male voice came from behind. I paused my hand and turned to look at him. He had a stern face, with deep-set eyes. The voice just now was completely at odds with his appearance. He had a white bandage on his forehead, blinking his eyes as he asked, Sister, where is this? Pure, innocent, and weak. I was stunned and asked, Don't you remember who you are? He furrowed his brows and thought for a moment. I remember, I am your younger brother, and you are my sister. I looked at his imposing figure that could completely envelop me, falling into silence. So why is he the younger brother and not the older one? No, I'm not his sister at all. I was just about to argue back. But for some reason, I stopped. I think back on the past 18 years, living alone all this time. There's nothing alive in the house except for seafood. If he could stay, would that mean I have one more family member? When I spoke again, my words were filled with authority. Yes, you are my younger brother. Now, sit down and fix the fishing net. Half an hour later. I watched the hole in the net grow larger, along with the man sweating profusely as he struggled with it, falling into silence. Fortunately, today is my day off from fishing, otherwise, there would be no chance of going out to sea. You. Ocean. I didn't know his name, so I urgently made one up. He obediently put down the tattered net and walked over to me, bowing his head in a listening posture. Don't fish anymore. I'm going to the market to buy some things, so you stay home and rest, I instructed. That's right, I was going to buy a net. But he refused. I don't want to stay home. Ocean wants to go to the market with sister too. Even though it was our first meeting, I didn't understand where his dependence on me came from. He hugged me like a spoiled golden retriever, pressing his head against my neck and nuzzling. I was so annoyed by him that I had no choice but to agree. To get to the market, we had to take a bus to the county town. He was unfamiliar with everything, closely following behind me. His bony, bruised hand tightly gripped the hem of my clothes. I found a seat in the back and sat down as the bus began to jolt along the bumpy road. Suddenly, he touched his head, revealing a pained expression. My head hurts. Sister, my head hurts. His face was contorted in a way that made it look somewhat deformed. I hurriedly let him lie down on my lap and gently massaged his head with both hands. Is it feeling any better? His tightly furrowed brows slowly relaxed. Yes, it feels so good. Thank you, sister. The moment my hand left his head, he would start to whine. So I held him like that until we reached the county town. What a difficult brother to take care of. I went straight to the old shop and bought several batches of fishing nets and bait. Turning around, I saw him squatting in front of the fish tank, watching the freshwater fish. I casually said, Do you want some? If you do, buy a few to take home. He excitedly scooped up a dozen little fish fry. The boss came out, smiling and said, Oh, Summer, why did you bring someone with you today? I smiled and said, This is my cousin, he came to stay with me. Then I pointed to his head, There's something wrong here. The boss squinted at him and said, "Your cousin. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before." I didn't think much of it, casually chatting with the boss, paid, and left. Where have I seen him before? After taking a few steps, I could still hear the boss mumbling to himself. In the past, I always carried the big and small bags myself. Now there was Ocean. Without me saying anything, he instinctively picked up everything, saying to himself, "Ocean, so strong." I couldn't help but smile at that. After buying him a few cheap clothes and daily necessities, I went to the seafood restaurant in the center of the county and headed straight to the kitchen. This time I had to take the bus because I was with the injured man. So I planned to negotiate the price of the fish with the manager first and bring them back another day. Who would have thought that the manager, with whom I had cooperated for a long time, would start to drive the price down? "Little sister, you said it yourself, the fish caught these days will definitely not be fresh if you bring them another day." The manager grinned, his greasy hand resting on my shoulder. "The price I just mentioned is firm. If you don't agree, just see if anyone outside dares to take it." "You!" I exclaimed angrily. "Ouch." The manager suddenly let out a cry of pain. "Let go of my hand. You, let go." Ocean's hand was firmly gripping the manager. "Get your dirty hands off my sister." His gaze was fierce and sinister. After turning to see my somewhat fearful expression, he suddenly released his grip and became docile and obedient again. Ocean and I were both kicked out. I didn't expect that on the first day of bringing him out, he would get me into trouble. I was about to scold him, but after locking eyes with his bright, sparkling gaze for a moment, we couldn't help but laugh. This kid is probably still waiting for my praise. Forget it, there are other places to get seafood, I comforted myself. Back in the village, I tidied up the fishing gear. Ocean was squatting behind the yard, soaking the large plastic bag filled with fish in the small pond in the yard to adjust the water temperature. "Little fish." I approached and heard him murmuring. "I stayed at home a few more days. This morning, I prepared to go out to sea." Ignoring Ocean's fuss, I resolutely left him at home. The sun was setting in the west, and it was already evening. If it were any other day, I might have drifted at sea for a few more days. But with him at home, I felt a genuine sense of concern. So I returned home after gathering the nets in the evening. I was surprised to find that the broken fence in the yard had been carefully repaired with wooden planks. The yard was cleaned up neatly, and the tools were arranged in order. "Sister." A man with a gentle smile called out to me from the doorway, holding a dish. I walked into the house in a daze. Did I pick up a little brother who was like a rice snail? On the wooden dining table, there were 3 dishes and a soup. In the past, when I came home to eat, I would always just grab some bread and milk to fill my stomach. Looking at the steaming hot dishes. "What is this?" I asked, trembling as I pointed at one of the fish soups. "Oh, this is the fish you caught in the fish trap. I picked the biggest one to make the soup." His eyes sparkled with joy. "The leftovers, I froze them in the fridge." I took a deep breath, telling myself not to get angry. Ocean walked over and affectionately hugged me. "Sister, Ocean has been so good, aren't you going to praise Ocean a little?" he whispered in my ear. The hot breath sprayed on my ear, and I uncomfortably struggled out of his embrace. "Good boy, you are really too good." After dinner, Ocean took the initiative to start washing the dishes. I walked to the backyard and saw that the messy soil next to the pond was divided into 2 parts. One part of the soil had been loosened. Looking at this situation, he must be planning to plant something. On the other piece of land, there were 2 bamboo strips placed. He saw me standing still and hugged me from behind, loudly reporting to me, "Sister. Today someone came to ask if I wanted to buy chicks and ducklings." I tilted my head to look at him and asked, "And then?" He said. I rummaged through my close pockets and found only 3 yuan, so I bought him 2 bamboo strips. To fulfill his wish, I still took out money to buy him a chick and a duckling. Every day, that group of chicks and ducklings chirped in the chicken coop he had set up. He even dug a new ditch to create a pond for the ducklings. Another piece of land was carefully cultivated by him and planted with sweet potatoes, cabbage, and other crops. Watching Ocean busy in a rough hemp vest and the oversized shorts that fishermen wear by the sea, this great courtyard suddenly filled with an inexplicable warmth. This is something I always wanted to do but felt powerless to implement. Watching him bend over with that familiar motion, I couldn't see at all the precious demeanor he had when I first brought him back. After Ocean's injury completely healed, he insisted on going out to sea with me. That morning at 4:30, the sky was dark and gloomy. He settled everything at home and started packing. I sat on a small chair in the yard, blankly eating the coarse grains and porridge he had prepared. There was no way around it, I was always in this state every morning. For some reason, Ocean was full of energy. He even dug out my market bag and stuffed it full. Seeing me eat slowly, Ocean hurriedly took my spoon and started feeding me porridge bite by bite. After he independently moved on to the step of wiping my mouth, I finally came to my senses. My boat was left to me by my parents. It has basic living supplies and facilities, enough for me to stay at sea for 3 to 5 days. This time, with Ocean, I decided to stay a few more days. When we arrived at the location marked by the radar, Ocean and I worked together to cast the fishing net. Then I stayed on the deck watching Ocean fish. Watching him, he seemed to transform into a statue. A fish was hooked. He grabbed a palm-sized sea fish and ran excitedly in front of me. "Sister, look at the fish." I responded in agreement, okay, fish." He was so excited that he unexpectedly hugged me and gave me a big kiss. I was held in his arms, unable to help but laugh along with him. We could only eat dry rations for lunch, but Ocean cooked the fish he caught, and we had a delightful extra meal. At night, the sea was calm and vast. Ocean and I lay on the deck watching the stars. I turned to Ocean and asked, "Ocean, does your head still hurt?" Ocean hesitated for a moment and said, "Sometimes it hurts a lot, and there are all these chaotic images flashing by, all people I don't recognize." This must be a memory from before Ocean's amnesia. Seeing that I was silent, Ocean squeezed closer to me and pulled me onto him, looking at me in a bit of a panic. "Sister, I don't know them at all. Can we stay like this forever, okay?" I forced a smile and looked at him. If Ocean says it's good, then it's good. In a daze, I fell asleep on the deck. I felt my body lighten as someone gently placed me on the only small bed of the fishing boat. He tenderly pressed his hand against my cheek, remaining still for a long time. 3 days later, we returned home with the nets. Ocean was very excited to see the net full of fish. I took the fish from this trip and the last, driving my little trailer, bumping along to the county town. Ocean can be intimidating when he doesn't say a word. At least to the manager. After successfully selling the fish, I went to the old shop to buy bait. As soon as the owner saw me, his eyes lit up. He grabbed a piece of old newspaper nearby and walked over to me. "Hey, Summer, look at this person in the newspaper, doesn't he look like him?" The newspaper the owner held was a bit yellowed. A man in a suit was surrounded by a group of people who looked like social elites. The newspaper had several bold headlines. Investing $15 billion to acquire land in the western suburbs, Land King Derek. I carefully discerned the blurry faces. Similar features, but completely different expressions. Where does he look like him? Ocean is much more handsome. I smiled and handed the newspaper back to him. The owner laughed heartily. "That guy is the big president of the capital, saying Ocean looks like him is just flattering him." Days passed by like this, one after another. I continued to go out to sea and fish. The difference was that there was now someone by my side who centered their world around me. When it got cold, he would add layers to my clothing. When I was hungry, he would cook for me. He is indeed a well-rounded and virtuous little brother, a true gem. On this day, as I returned home, I saw a familiar figure standing in front of the yard from a distance. It was my neighbor brother, who had grown up with me. "Jade, big brother? What brings you here?" I hurriedly walked up to ask. Ocean also silently quickened his pace, closely following behind me. Jade hugged me tightly and exclaimed, "Summer." I was very happy too. Who would have thought that a sudden force would pull us apart? Ocean stood beside me with a dark expression, one hand gripping my shoulder, trapping me in his embrace. He said to Jade, "If you're going to talk, then talk. Why are you hugging my sister?" Jade went to college in the city and would only return to the village during the summer. He looked at me in confusion and asked, "Summer, who is this?" I stammered, "A cousin who lives far away. He came to seek refuge with me." Jade furrowed his brows, scanning between us, and pulled me aside to whisper, "This man looks much older than you." "Summer, what is going on here?" I lowered my head and recounted everything. "You saved him, and after that, it's a matter for the police." "Come on, take him with me to the police station," Jade said, pulling my hand. "I know he is right. But I just can't move. Ocean, he helps me carry things, helps me with chores, and no matter how late I come home, there will always be a light left on for me." Ocean filled the void in my soul. Even though it has only been a little over a month. I. Brother Jade, you should go back first. I still need to think about this, I said, lowering my head in shame. There was a gaze radar behind us, almost burning through my clothes. As soon as I entered, Ocean was sulking. "Ocean, it's time to eat." I looked at the tall figure curled up on my small bed and called softly. The man remained motionless, his broad back filled with a sense of loneliness. I grew anxious and stepped forward to see what was wrong. To my surprise, Ocean wrapped his arm around my waist and threw me onto the bed. "No, that's not right." It fell on him. "Sister, who is that man?" Ocean asked me sourly, "Why do you have to hug him when you can just hug Ocean?" I looked at Ocean. His nose was straight, and his eyes were bright. They were filled with grievance and anger. His mouth was still chattering away, accusing Jade of the despicable act of hugging me. Lovely Ocean. Kind Ocean. Diligent Ocean. Still, the Ocean I like. I gazed into his eyes for a long time, long enough for him to unconsciously close his mouth. I couldn't help but lean in and kiss his lips. He froze. I was like a little beast, licking awkwardly. After a moment, he held my lips, fiercely attacking like a conqueror. "Sister. Sister." He called out, sticky and messy, as he continued. "Are you still a baby on milk?" "Stop shouting," I said with restraint. The night passed until dawn. Since that day, Ocean seemed to have triggered some button. No matter what he did, he would come over to seek praise and affection. The nightly routine was no exception. I was sinking deeper and deeper into this sweetness. Even though I knew all of it was a false bubble. Life went on, plain yet not lacking in romance. Until that day. It was already winter. The weather that day was cold and gloomy, and Ocean and I had just returned from the village chief's house. A long line of shiny black luxury cars was parked at the village entrance. A richly dressed woman stood at the gate of my yard, anxiously looking around. A sense of foreboding surged within me. Sure enough, when she saw Ocean, my premonition was confirmed. "Derek." The woman stepped forward, her expression agitated, her eyes reddening. "Derek?" I felt like I had seen that name somewhere. I stared blankly as she anxiously yet gracefully checked Ocean from head to toe. Ocean confusedly pushed her hand away. "Who are you?" The woman wiped away her tears with her fingertip. "Derek, I'm your mother." It was as if she had just noticed me. "You are, the girl who saved Derek, right?" Mrs. Susan, disregarding Derek's resistance, was determined to take him away. Derek wrapped his arm around my shoulder, holding me close. He looked warily at the elegantly dressed woman. "Mom? I only have a sister, where does a mom come from?" "Derek, if you regain your memory, you will surely hate this version of yourself," Mrs. Susan said, exasperated. "I have my memories, I want to be with my sister." Derek looked down at me, revealing a brilliant smile. I lowered my head, silently feeling my eyes well up with tears. The innocent and harmless Ocean, is he really that big shot from the capital? I can't live without him. I shouldn't keep him here. Someone like him shouldn't be trapped in this small fishing village. Mrs. Susan pointed at me and said, "Sister, her?" Her words were filled with disdain. I felt guilty and dared not speak. She held Derek's hand with her expensive jade bracelet and said earnestly, "Derek, you need to go back with your mother to get treatment. You have your own biological sister, you know?" Then, Mrs. Susan had a private conversation with me. "Miss Summer, I am very grateful that you saved my son. I don't care what your relationship with Derek is right now. But I want to tell you that Derek's career cannot be without him. His health condition also urgently needs examination and treatment." She took out a check with an amount I had never seen before. "This is your reward for helping him, thank you for your trouble." I stared at her blankly, not accepting the check. Derek's body was in good shape, he had a regular routine and a healthy diet. Everything about him was fine, except for the fact that he didn't know who he really was. She said meaningfully, "Derek has his own fiancée. They grew up together and are deeply in love. Their relationship is very good." Mrs. Susan grabbed my hand and slapped the check heavily into my palm. "Are you really willing to blind yourself and be the lover of the unawakened Derek? A fiancé? Yes, how did I not think of that? For privileged people like them in high society, having a fiancé is the most normal thing." I promised to help her persuade Derek. When I got home, Derek was squatting by the pond watching his little ducks. Before I could say anything, he gloomily said, "Does my sister want me to go with that woman too?" I squatted down beside him and saw his tears streaming down his face. "No, sister, I'm not going anywhere." I gently pressed his big head against my chest, just like the first time I held him. I could even smell the soapberry scent in his hair, just like in mine. He cried even more freely, pressing his lips against the corner of my mouth as he sobbed. We both cried like children, and he kept kissing my tears. No matter how I tried to persuade him, even promising to visit him once a week, Derek stubbornly refused to leave. After I cried myself to sleep, I vaguely heard Derek say, "I know you won't come to see me. The look in your eyes before really seemed like you wanted to get rid of me." The next day. I don't know what Derek and Mrs. Susan talked about. When Mrs. Susan asked me with a complicated expression if I was willing to assist Derek with his memory recovery therapy, I agreed without hesitation. Just consider me the last selfish one. I don't want to miss the chance to accompany Ocean in his final moments. Perhaps soon, the one replacing Ocean will be the new real estate tycoon of the capital, Derek. It was only when I arrived at Derek's home that I truly realized how great our differences were. The lakeside villa, covering over 700 square meters, had 3 layers of security just to get from the gate to the villa entrance. Derek held my hand all the way. Mrs. Susan spoke to him. He always looked at me, only answering after getting my signal. This made Mrs. Susan glare at me with gritted teeth the entire way. As soon as Derek returned to his room, the family doctor and nurse came forward to check on his condition. Everything proceeded in an orderly manner. Even while being examined, he held my hand tightly without letting go. Mrs. Susan walked in with a grim expression and called me outside. I patted Derek, who pouted in dissatisfaction and reluctantly let go of my hand. Derek has suffered a concussion, and there is a hematoma in his skull. This is the reason he has been unable to recover his memory. Mrs. Susan said tearfully, "After stabilizing his condition, we will proceed with the surgery." I started to supervise Derek's diet. He insisted on having a seafood feast from the fishing village, and Mrs. Susan indulgently agreed repeatedly. After I sternly stopped him, Derek sat there quietly like a chicken, drinking vegetable and lean meat porridge. Mrs. Susan was dumbfounded. Derek couldn't engage in vigorous exercise before the surgery. So on sunny afternoons, I would sit on the terrace lounge chair with him, cuddling him and telling him stories. Under the soothing sunlight, both Derek and I fell asleep. Until I was awakened by a furry sensation. As I opened my eyes, a visibly uncomfortable Mrs. Susan immediately left with a blanket. Mrs. Susan also approached the matter from other angles, hoping Derek could recall some past memories. She dug out the photo albums of Derek from childhood to adulthood. I saw Derek dressed as a girl with pigtails and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Mrs. Susan shot me a glance, but she couldn't help laughing either. Only Derek remained clueless, not knowing what we were doing. Before the surgery, Derek's fiancée came to visit him once. At that time, Derek was giving me a massage. As he was massaging, he began to fidget and pinch elsewhere. When I caught him, he looked innocent and refused to admit it. A soft voice came through, "Excuse me. Derek?" A beautiful and elegant girl stood at the door. I was so startled that I quickly sat up. "You must be Miss Summer, let me introduce myself, I am Derek's fiancée." She extended a hand, smiling gently. I shamefully shook her hand. Derek stepped forward, separating our hands and gripping mine in his. "Who are you?" Derek asked bluntly. "Pfft. Derek, you really should take a look at yourself like this, it's so silly." She covered her mouth and laughed out loud, wildly snapping photos of Derek with her phone, and Derek, displeased, shooed her away. Before she left, she playfully winked at me, "Until we meet again, Miss Summer." Derek's physical condition has been adjusted to a satisfactory level. On the day of the surgery, Derek's parents, grandparents, and his fiancée all came. For some reason, my vision gradually became blurry. I wiped my eyes and realized I was crying. I remembered that just before the surgery, Derek was earnestly reminding me to wait for him at the door of the ward. I forced a smile and agreed. But I knew that once the surgery was over, my ocean would completely disappear. I wonder if Derek will still remember me? The surgery was very successful, the attending physician announced to us cheerfully. "You can visit him after the 48-hour observation period is over." It was 3 days later when I saw Derek again. During that time, I had been waiting outside the hospital room, watching many people come to visit, only to be turned away. It was quite amusing, just like me. During this time, Mrs. Susan felt a bit sorry for me waiting at the door of the hospital room and arranged for me to have a double bed to sleep in. The door opened. The VIP single suite was not like a hospital room, the warm winter sun spilled over the wooden furniture. Derek sat quietly on the hospital bed, reading a book. "Ocean." "Derek." I timidly stood at the door of the hospital room, hesitant to go in. It seemed he had just noticed someone, and his gaze swept coldly in my direction. "Who are you?" As soon as he finished speaking, tears streamed down my face. I quickly turned around to adjust my emotions. "Don't cry," I had long been prepared for the fact that he wouldn't remember me, right? Striving to put on a smile, I stepped forward and said, "It's normal that you don't remember me. We spent some time together when you had amnesia." His eyes were fixed on the classic in his hands, and after a long while, he said, "Is that so?" He said flatly, "I've forgotten everything." The smile on my face almost faltered. "I've already heard the specifics from my mother," Derek continued. "I am grateful that you saved me. If it weren't for you, I might not be alive today." I waved my hands repeatedly. "No need to thank me, you have been very good to me. I should be the one thanking you. I should thank Ocean for giving me a feeling of home that I hadn't experienced in a long time." He closed the book. His calm and unruffled eyes finally focused on my face. "But I have a fiancée. Miss Summer deceived me into being your boyfriend while I was not fully aware, without knowing my personal feelings. Isn't that a bit unethical?" I froze. "However, I do not intend to make things difficult for you. I had my mother prepare a check and a house of sufficient amount. I hope you will accept it. I do not remember this past, and I ask Miss Summer to keep it confidential." He concluded, "We should not, and probably will not, meet again in the future." His words were very dignified, yet also quite ruthless. It tore apart the last shred of hypocritical friendship between him and me. Two parallel lines, forcibly intersected by uncontrollable events, finally returned to their rightful paths. This relationship, which only I remember, will eventually be buried deep underground. I left the check that Mrs. Susan initially gave me at the Shaw residence. As for the check and the house that Derek gave me, I accepted them both. I also wanted to be strong, to feign nonchalance and high-mindedness, to refuse him, to tear the check to shreds and throw it in his face. But I couldn't. Because I discovered that I was pregnant with his child. Judging by the months, it must have happened during that time in the capital. I also made a bolder decision. I want to give birth to him alone. My expenses are very small, the interest from the check is enough for me to eat for a few days. But the child's expenses are quite large, just the prenatal checkups cost over $10,000. Derek thoughtfully bought me a house in the county town. It's not far from the sea, just a 10-minute walk away. Without Derek, my life has returned to the calm and uneventful days of living alone. Although I'm a bit unaccustomed to the absence of oceans chattering by my side, I have long since grown used to the silence of being alone. Jade learned about my situation and occasionally comes to visit me. He told me that after Derek's incident, he went to the police station to report it, and that's when Susan's wife came looking for him. I smiled. It no longer mattered. Derek was never my Derek, only Ocean was my Ocean. I should have returned Derek to them long ago. That day, I was lazily basking in the sun in the small yard of the villa, drinking the goat milk that had just been delivered in the morning. Strangely, I had never ordered goat milk. I even called the number on the goat milk carton, and they insisted that I had subscribed to goat milk for 10 years. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard a strange noise at the door. There was a loud clang. I was startled awake. A boy had actually climbed over my wall and fallen into my yard. Just as I was about to scream in fright, the boy covered my mouth with his hand and said, "Shoo, kind sister, let me hide for a moment." The noise at the door grew louder. "Young master, he went that way. Hurry, go chase him." After a long while, the noise gradually subsided. The boy let out a sigh of relief and released the hand that was covering my mouth. "Who are you?" I glared at him angrily. "Get out of my house right now. Otherwise, I will call the police." The boy hurriedly blurted out a stream of words. From his animated gestures, I understood. He was a free-spirited truant who loved freedom. He pleaded with me to take him in for a while. "Those bodyguards of my dad are idiots. They must think I've run off somewhere else and won't come back here to check for a while." The boy pleaded as he squeezed my shoulder, "Kind-hearted sister, please take me in. I can do anything. Once the semester is over, I'll give you half of my red envelope money for this year." I initially refused firmly. But upon hearing the amount of his red envelope money, I yielded. Who would turn down money? Moreover, babies are all money-consuming beasts. I could earn the milk powder money just by lying down, why not? Besides, this boy wasn't lying. Cooking, sweeping, picking up deliveries. Every day he wore an apron, looking like a proper house husband, and he worked diligently. I go out for a walk every day. After Lucien found out I was pregnant, he only allowed me to do the task of taking out the trash. These past few days, I've been taking out the trash as usual, but I always feel like there's a gaze watching me from the shadows. When I look back, there's nothing there. After Lucien accompanied me for my prenatal checkup, he kept chattering away, begging me to let him be the baby's godfather. I was speechless. "Young man, you're only 17, at most, you can be the baby's older brother," I said earnestly. A 17-year-old godfather? What would that make 27-year-old Derek? Lucien held my pregnancy checkup report with a frown, thought for a while, and agreed, "Brother is brother, I want to be the closest brother." Then he mumbled, "Why do I always feel a chill behind me?" After returning home, Lucien happily ran to the kitchen, tied on an apron, and started cooking. I realized that the reason he didn't want to go to school was that he wanted to do housework at home. According to him, he would definitely be a devoted husband in the future, aiming to be the top man on the list of male virtues. Suddenly, the doorbell at the entrance rang. I was sitting on the swing in the yard, basking in the sun and knitting. I thought it was the delivery of goat milk. "Lucien, open the door for the goat milk." Lucien hurriedly went to open the door. It's summer. A familiar deep male voice reached my ears. My hands, which were knitting, froze. It was Derek. Why was he here? Did he know about the child? I sat there, dazed, too afraid to turn around. Derek pushed past Lucien's obstruction and forcefully entered the courtyard. A large shadow enveloped me. It had been 4 months since we last met, and Derek no longer bore any trace of the ocean. He was impeccably dressed in a suit, his expression cold. His cufflinks were fastened meticulously, and there wasn't a single wrinkle on his tie. He was the elegant and handsome Mr. Shao from the capital, not the one who used to run around in a tank top and shorts, calling me sister and sticking to me like glue. Derek silently watched me for a long time before speaking. You have a child? I couldn't tell if it was my illusion, but I always felt his voice was somewhat strained. Is it the one with the baby face? He asked softly. This made Lucien furious. I'm not a baby face. Diamond male. Haven't you heard? Now even older sisters like our type. You, with your greasy uncle vibe, are so out of style. Lucien said, gesturing wildly at Derek. Derek completely ignored him. I also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, my pregnancy wasn't very obvious yet, I could just say I was earlier in the months. Wait, how did he know I was pregnant? I honestly raised the question. My mother said she saw you at the obstetrics and gynecology department. He repeated in a low voice, you have a child. I felt a bit annoyed and impatiently said, yes, I have a child. What exactly brings you here? He stood there silently. Time seemed to freeze. Suddenly, 2 drops of tears fell onto my maternity dress, spreading out in circles of dampness. When I looked up, I vaguely saw ocean in his tear-filled eyes. He cried as he said, I remember everything. Am I still too late? I neither admitted nor denied it. Instead, I politely asked him to leave. I found it hard to face such a scene. Besides, I hadn't forgotten that he had a fiancée. As a result, on the 2nd day, the 3rd day, every time I went out to take out the trash, I could see his car parked not far from my front door in the alley. I went for a walk in the park. He silently followed behind me. It was another evening. After throwing out the trash, I was slowly walking in the park. While sitting on a bench watching the sunset, I noticed someone had joined me. After a long while, he spoke up, does he really feel at ease leaving you all alone? I took a moment to respond. Lucien had recently formed a basketball league with some middle school students nearby, and every evening he would run out to play with his friends. I hadn't even had the chance to speak. His low voice came through. I miss you so much. He turned his head, the sunset's afterglow reflected in his eyes, and the shimmering sea sparkled in them. He looked at me and said, he is still just a kid himself. How could he possibly take good care of you? Summer, give me a chance to take care of you and the baby. Oh? So you're saying that it's not your baby, yet you're still willing? I asked with a cold expression. He squatted in front of me. In his deep, handsome eyes, there was a hint of humility. I'm willing. How could I not be willing? As long as you let me take care of you. Just like before, you just need to stay by my side. When Lucien got home, he found that his position had been taken. Derek had laid out 8 dishes and a soup on the dining table, with nutrition and color all perfectly balanced. You. Lucien trembled as he pointed at Derek for a long time. Frustrated that I couldn't control myself, he pulled me aside, heartbroken, and said, how could you let this happen, sister? How could he invade so recklessly? I held up my chopsticks with an innocent look. He said that even if the baby isn't his, he would still be willing to take care of me. Who would refuse a free nanny? I admit there is a bit of superficiality involved. Lucien, holding his forehead, looked at me with a face full of disappointment. Half an hour later. So delicious, so delicious. Lucien stuffed his mouth full of food, shouting while he happily devoured the dishes on the table. Derek, who was feeding me, shot him a sidelong glance and said, "When did I ever allow you to eat the food I made for summer?" His skills? They look 100 times better than Ocean's. Could it be that the original Derek was already a great cook? "Sister, look at him," Lucien complained to me in an affected manner. "I can't finish it all by myself." I chose to comfort Lucien. Derek fell silent. His eyes were red again, filled with a mournful gaze, looking angry yet unable to express it. Lucien raised an eyebrow at Derek with a smug expression, making loud smacking sounds. The strange balance of life among two men and a woman was achieved. The turning point happened that day. Derek was walking me back when we found the front door open. Lucien's basketball had fallen in the yard, a sign of a struggle. I was so scared that I quickly called the police, but the police chief told me with an inscrutable expression, "Don't meddle in what doesn't concern you." A few days later, Derek received a phone call. He looked down at me, who was knitting, and said, "I know where Lucien is." We rushed to the capital overnight. Derek held me as we entered the upscale banquet hall. The sign at the entrance read, "Lucien's 18th birthday celebration." A young boy in a tailcoat stood beside an elegant uncle, looking quite unconvinced. Then I watched as Lucien, who loved doing housework, was forced to perform a series of activities like playing the piano, playing the violin, and singing. I finally understood why he wanted to run away from home. Having a father who loves to make his son perform is unbearable for anyone. However, knowing that he is safe, I was finally able to put my worried heart at ease. When it came time for the toast, the uncle brought Lucien to Derek. "Lucien, this is your brother Derek. He helped his father secure a major project at just 20 years old. You should learn a lot from him," the uncle said to the absent-minded Lucien. "Sister?" Lucien's spirit returned to him, and he exclaimed in shock, he. So he is Derek." The uncle looked at him in surprise. "Do you know Derek's wife?" "What wife? How could my sister possibly be his wife?" Lucien retorted without hesitation. Derek said coldly, "Young master, you should take on some responsibilities as a man." After hearing this, Lucien's father glared, "Whose young girl have you harmed?" Lucien looked incredulous. "Harmed? I'm the one who's afraid of being harmed by others. My virginity is meant for my future wife." Lucien shouted louder than his father, and I rubbed my ears. "Being a virgin, this is very manly." I felt Derek's gaze instantly land on me. The red wine in the glass visibly swayed. He pretended to be calm as he pulled me into an empty room, looking down and locking eyes with me for a long time. Long enough that I felt embarrassed and looked away. He asked, "Is Lucien a virgin?" I was extremely embarrassed and angry. How would I know if he is a virgin? His gaze shifted to my belly, then, "Is this child mine?" "My child?" He suppressed his excitement and repeated the question. But his words were already filled with certainty. I pouted. I never said the child was Lucien's. It was he who had always firmly believed that. Fantasizing about wearing a green hat, insisting on putting it on his own head. Besides, he's still a minor, isn't it a bit inappropriate to harm him? In a moment of distraction, he cried again, "I am the child's father. Hasn't my sister always been mine?" The way he cried while calling me sister was just like Ocean. My heart softened, and I hugged him. "Yes, I have always been yours." Derek and I made up. Mrs. Susan, who is tough on the outside but soft on the inside, was almost going crazy with joy when she heard the news of my pregnancy. She sent boxes and boxes of baby supplies to our home, both for boys and girls. Derek's fiancée also came to congratulate us. I only then realized that this fiancé and Derek were just using each other as shields. She is also one of Derek's bad friends. She eagerly showed me the videos of Derek, who had been sick and drunk during the 4 months I was away. All he kept saying was, "Sister. Summer." There was also the scene of him holding the check I left behind and the shorts I bought for him, crying out, "Ocean is good, Ocean is very good. You can go now." Derek ruthlessly sent his fiancée away. Watching him embarrassingly look at me with joy, he could only smile helplessly. Derek wanted me to move out and live with him in a flat in the city center. But I had grown accustomed to the seaside view and didn't want to move easily. So I only agreed to move during the last month. So Derek had long been renovating the house. Non-slip carpets were laid all over, and the sharp corners of the furniture were padded securely. A specialized prenatal nutritionist came to prepare brunch. I sensed something was off after just one bite. So the meals you brought me back then were all made by someone else? I pushed away Derek's hand that was trying to feed me and questioned him. He carefully wiped the crumbs from the corner of my mouth. I made you some too, but my mother said if I wanted to earn your forgiveness, it was best not to let that meal appear in front of you. A familiar look of grievance appeared on his face. I couldn't help but want to laugh. It must have been terrible if even the doting Mrs. Susan couldn't stand it. In early spring, the season of blooming flowers, our baby with Derek was born. A sturdy little boy, his loud cries echoed throughout the entire floor. Derek named him Ren. Mrs. Susan teased the baby, calling him all sorts of endearing names. Finally free, Lucien came to see me and became Ren's godfather. Derek's ex-fiancée became Ren's godmother. After I finished my confinement and returned home, Derek spoiled me to the heavens. Even during the most challenging first 3 months with the baby, Derek never let me lift a finger. Watching Ren take his first wobbly steps in the villa's yard, Derek walked over to me and kissed my cheek. "Honey, let's bring the baby to eat." I turned and smiled. "Okay."